Everybody's away at camp meeting and nobody has a scale to weigh on. Is that right? But what I'm just dying to know is if anybody's experienced any weight loss this week. Yes, we got one. Give her a hand. Amen.
Wow.
Amen.
Okay, she's just sharing that she's lost quite a few pounds this week, as in 10. Are you walking after meals?
I'm sorry.
You walking after meals?
I'm doing everything that I've done.
Wow. High fiber, walking after meals, exercise?
I just changed my diet.
Okay, so it's basically the diet change that has given her the results she's seen so far. And really, this is a lot of what we see. Now, when people lose 10 pounds in 1 week, my advice to them is slow it down. We don't want you to lose. Right at first, people may lose water and they may lose other things. So your first week, you can get by with 10, 12 pounds if you happen to be one of those lucky ones. But most people are not immediately going to lose weight. What you're going to see, though, is a gradual weight loss. Actually, the first week, people tend to gain about 1 to 2 pounds the first week.
But you heard what she said. She said, I was doing everything you said.
That's
so
right.
I thought of Colleen. Yes.
And that's right. The people that do the things, the doers are the reapers. You know, if you plant the seed, you're going to get the food, the result. If you put the effort into doing the things that science says will work to help people lose weight, you're going to do that. And as a result of that, symptoms of diabetes or cardiovascular disease or inflammatory diseases of other kinds or whatever just really flow. So we had a lady come into our program. She had a long Adventist heritage. And if I actually told you who her parents were, most of you would know who her parents were. But she came to the program and she started doing what we recommended. Her husband bucked her at every step. He did not want to do it. He did not want to participate, but she thought, well, I may be on my own, but I'm going to do it.
He would drop her off, and then he would go out to eat or whatever, and then come back to get her after the program.
So he did come to one program, but that was the last program he came to. And other than that, he did his thing, and she did hers. But she had terrible rheumatoid arthritis. And she suffered a great deal with it. Well, she started realizing results right away, and they were all good and positive. But about a year later, we were holding another seminar in the same restaurant. And the door opens after the first seminar had already started. We were probably 10 minutes into the program, and she walks through the door. I instantly recognized her, but it was amazing that I did because she had lost 75 pounds. And she stood up a little later on and she told us her story. I invited her, if she were willing to talk about what had happened when she went through the program, because all the new participants just love to hear the stories of what happens. And so she stood up front and she told her story of how she had started this program and how she began losing the weight. And then her husband died unexpectedly. And she had that grief to work through. And she said, that actually helped me lose some of my pounds. But she remained faithful to the program and just kept doing the stuff, eating the high fiber foods and doing the walking and things like that. But she said, the unexpected benefit of all this is my pain from my rheumatoid arthritis has gone down so much. She said, if I had only known this, I would have done it 10 years ago. Well, in my heart, I said, you did know this. You did know this because you have had the little red books. You've had the spirit of prophecy. And so many of us as Adventists, we're turning our backs on this message that we've been given. Guys, God's got a plan. Do we believe in His plan? Or do we have a form of religion without the power? And, you know, as I've gotten into the science of diabetes, the science of diabetes keeps running me back to the God who created man. He's got a plan. He's going to finish this work. He may cut it short in righteousness for some of us, but He's got a plan. We need to do His plan. Now we have the Scriptures, our number one standard of faith. We have the supplement of the Spirit of prophecy. And now we have another supplement, modern science. What more evidence do we need? It's time to jump on board. We are poised to be leaders in this battle. Do you know, as Adventists, if you happen to have had experience as an Adventist, if you've read the books, you know the stuff. And you are an expert in the eyes of the world. You know what that means?
I want to talk. This is the time of my story. I want to share my story.
Absolutely.
So we are talking about managing gene expression, and that's partly why my story is in this, because of my family history. But before we go further, our verse for today says, I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. You will understand the significance of that more as we get into this talk. Remember that not yet, learning objectives. All right, we're going to talk about leptin resistance, so we want you to understand the symptoms of it, and then the interventions to be able to reverse leptin resistance, and state the way that the circadian rhythms impact blood sugars. Also, we're going to define epigenetics and how it affects diabetes, and identify interventions that promote your very best gene expression. So this is for educational purposes only. Make sure you talk with your physicians before you do things. But hopefully you're going to learn some things today that can help you. We have talked to you some about, or we've had a lot of questions from you about holding programs. And when we mention that it's 8 weeks, people sigh. And Steve says, well, you can do it as 6 weeks, and then use the session 7 and session 8 for follow-up, like once a month. But I'll tell you what we're going to talk about here on the leptin resistance is what helped me so much. And every time I tell this story, there are people in the audience that they realize this is what their problem is. This is why they can't lose weight. So consider real seriously, if you're going to hold it for 6 weeks and then spread it out, that when you finally get this lecture to them, this is something that can help a lot of people. So I was pre-diabetic. My mother had died from complications of diabetes. And every time I would eat a candy bar, Mother used to say, you're going to have diabetes. And so yes, Mother, but I would eat my candy bar anyway. And so year by year, I gained about 5 pounds, which isn't a whole lot, but just little by little, I was going up. And it really didn't wake me up till I stepped on the scales and I had hit 200 pounds. It's like, okay, this is difficult. So I decided at that point, the trip to the doctor, my triglycerides were almost 600. Cholesterol was 263. My insulin resistance was 15, and it should be what? 2 or less. Very good. You're getting that. And of course, I weighed 200 pounds. So my physician had me on metformin, and I was on thyroid medication, We did some nutritional supplements at home and whatnot. But when we went through the first program with Chuck Cleveland, where we helped him, he wanted to mentor Steve with doing diabetes reversal. And we had been nurses all these years and had no idea that diabetes was reversible. So when we went through that program and we got to the lecture where they talked about fats, and the way they presented it, as they were talking, the light was coming on, and I realized that diabetes is not a sugar problem. Diabetes is a fat problem, and I got angry.
For months.
I was really angry. But we came out of that, and we pondered, and we started making some changes. I mean, people would ask me, what's your favorite food? My favorite food was baked cheese. Pizza, lasagna, stuffed shells. I just absolutely, I'm looking at the look on some of your faces. I'm just telling you, that's where I was. And so I knew I had to make some changes. And every Friday night, this was my sugar treat for my family. Every Friday night, we had homemade applesauce and homemade sweet rolls. Oh, it was so good. It was such a treat. Well, we knew we had to make some changes. And so when we got involved in our community and Steve started writing the program, we knew that we had to live what we were teaching. And so we started trying to fix meals, and there was stuff that I threw out. It was just not edible. Now, we had moved over to Grundy County to help take care of my dad and his wife. They were vegan, and they made some sort of cheese sauce, and I had had a history years before of cheese sauce, and I could not bear, all the years I took care of them, I could not bear to make them cheese sauce out of cashews and pimentos and whatever. I just thought that was horrible stuff. I did not know how to cook vegan. And so I would try. I fed Daddy. He wanted his big breakfast in the morning. And so I would make him food in my kitchen, and I would take it to them. And there were times I hoped he didn't ask me what was in it. I tried to be really good, and I tried to learn. And there were times he told me, I am really hungry for tapioca pudding. Well, tapioca pudding to me was eggs and milk. I had no idea that you could fix it with good stuff, and you could have a decent tapioca pudding. But we don't get a do-over. So I have learned a lot now, and I do so much better. But my kitchen is totally different than what it used to be. And so after I had gone through this, my triglycerides are finally down to 149. Did you know that they've changed the standard? It was 150, and I just dreamed of getting to 150, and I made it to 149. And when I got my results back, in the envelope with the results was a little notice, and it said the new standard is 100. So I'm not there yet, but I'm still working on it. Okay, my cholesterol, 187. My insulin resistance down to 2.6, and I have lost 50 pounds. So I praise the Lord. It was not overnight. It was not even in 1 year. It took several years for me to get here, but I know what I need to do. I do watch my weight. I weigh almost every single day. That is what works for me. Some people can't do that. They want to weigh once a week or once a month, and that works well for them. I want to know if I'm starting to trend up. I want to know immediately so that I can do something about it. We have gone to 2 meals a day, and that works really well for us, except for when we're at camp meeting. It doesn't work. But part of my challenge has been leptin resistance. Now, I had no idea what this was. We didn't know as a couple what this was when we started doing the program. But leptin is a master hormone that regulates the way you burn your food for energy. And just like you can develop insulin resistance, you can also develop leptin resistance. And if you have developed insulin resistance, you are probably also leptin resistant. So the same thing that causes the one causes the other. So this hormone regulates thyroid, melatonin, sex drive, the adrenal glands, growth hormone, insulin. See that? It regulates our insulin as well, and our immune system. It was discovered in the late 1990s, and the way we learned about it, well, guys, I do all the driving for the most part because I get motion sick. And so it's just easier for me to drive. But while I drive, this guy always wants to be productive. So he's studying the computer, he's watching videos, he's reading, he's being productive. So one night we're on our way home from prayer meeting and he's watching videos. Well, when I'm in the car, I'm a captive audience. Most of the time I tune it out. But something about it this time clicked. He got through to me. And when he finished the video, it was just a short little 10 or 12 minutes by Dr. Byron Richards. When he finished the video, I said, play that again. So he played it again. And when he was done, I reached over and I patted his leg and I said, Steve, that is my problem. Well, he didn't realize that I had a problem. And so it was not until I started telling my story that all of this came out. We lived in Grundy County, which is up on the mountain. So anytime you want to go anywhere for anything other than Dollar General, whatever, you have to go off the mountain. Well, I knew where every McDonald's was on my way to wherever. You know, they serve soft-served ice cream cones. And my sister had told me that McDonald's soft-serve, she's into Weight Watchers. She said the soft-serve ice cream cones are low-fat, so that's a real good choice for you if you want to have something sweet. I could go from McDonald's in Monteagle to McDonald's in Tiftonia and McDonald's in Jasper, Yes, I did. And I would be sitting there eating the ice cream cone going, what am I doing? I don't want to be doing this. But I could finish a meal and get up and go to clean up in the kitchen, and I'm going through the cupboards. What else could I have to eat? I'm eating a meal, and I'm thinking about what's my next meal? Where's my food coming from? It was this constant drive to be eating, and that's all I thought about. And so we listened to this video, and he was describing me. Then we listened to the next video. There's actually 3 that he has put out. Dr. Byron Richards, leptin resistance. And so we listened to the next one. I got home, we listened to them all again so I could take notes. I wanted to write everything down. And I made a decision in my heart that I was going to do something about it. But here's a little more about leptin. A normal leptin, we have adequate fat stores in our body. And so we have a balanced metabolism. We have a normal appetite. There is communication between the fat, we now know, between the fat and the brain. And so it's sort of like it's a starvation defense mechanism, so that when we're starving, we don't have enough fat stores. We get really skinny. Our fat gets used up. So we don't have enough. So that message goes to the brain and it slows down our metabolism so that we're not needing as much energy, but it also increases our appetite so that when we do have access to food, we're going to gobble it up. So that is leptin during starvation. This is a situation that my dad was in. And Steve can tell it really well. Tell about Daddy.
Well, her dad never learned to cook. Anytime the kids were growing up, if he had to cook a meal, if his wife wasn't home, the kids got Campbell's condensed tomato soup and peanut butter sandwiches. That was the sum total of his ability in the kitchen. And so we got in North Carolina, and I think I told some of that, didn't I? Yeah, a little bit of it, wanting to go see Dad. And the issue was that his wife had Alzheimer's, and he couldn't cook. He couldn't entertain guests, and he was too embarrassed to say, "No, I can't fix you meals. I'm sorry." And so he would just say, "Well, some other time. Now's not time. It's really not convenient," etc. It had been a year and a half since we had seen him. When he fell and broke his leg, the man he was showing property to picked him up and carried him out of the woods. And he tried to exist at home by sitting in his office chair and having his wife drag him around the house. But that didn't work well. So they finally had to call the ambulance, and he went to the hospital and was in the hospital for several days, and then spent 3 weeks in rehab before he went to live with her mother, his wife's mother.
No, daughter.
His wife's daughter. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. Bad connection. Anyway, she had Alzheimer's. Every time she wanted a drink, she had to ask for a drink. Every time she wanted to go to the bathroom, she had to ask, "Where's the bathroom?" She couldn't remember from one time to the next. We knew that she could function in her home, but she couldn't function anywhere else. My parents had been killed in an auto accident years before, and so for me, the decision was already made before this incident happened. If your folks need you, we need to go. And when we learned about it, I said, "Karen, your dad needs you." And boom, the decision was made. We're moving to Tennessee. Just that quick. So we moved to Tennessee. When Dad was in the hospital, her brother called her and said, "Your dad looks like he should be in a coffin." A man my size, I mean, he weighed 180 pounds roughly, which is more than I weigh, but he was 6 feet 2 inches tall. He had lost down to around 140. He was skin and bones. He looked like a skeleton with leather stretched over it. It just was sad. He was starving to death. Well, Karen goes to his home. When we got there, we moved our RV into their driveway until we could get a place, get the trees felled in the lot next door and build us a home. So she went in and started cooking for them right away. And he would sit there at the table and eat. Now, I have seen lots of old people eat. I have never seen an old person eat like her dad ate. He would sit there and he would scarf this thing down. I mean, just shoveling it in his mouth. Like it was incredible to watch. And beads of perspiration would pop out on his forehead. He'd pull his handkerchief out. He'd wipe his brow. And he would load up his plate and eat again. Handkerchief again, go back at it. He ate like a 16-year-old kid would eat that's been running a marathon day after day after day. And he started gaining weight back. But after he put on about 15 pounds or so, he slacked off and started eating like an old person again. It was amazing. I think the issue was because his cells were so depleted, he was sending very little leptin to his brain, and it says, "You got to eat to rebuild. We got to rebuild some of these fat stores." And so that's what was going on. We will only do what our hormones dictate to us to do.
So, when you get leptin resistance, there are excessive fat stores, which I had a lot of excessive fat stores. And so there develops a blockade between the communication between the fat cells and the brain, so that the brain never gets the message that there's plenty of fat stores. So it thinks that the fat stores are low. It slows the metabolism down. That's where low thyroid comes in. It slows the metabolism and gives you a ravenous appetite. All you can think about is eating all the time. And so this is the situation that I was in. Now, the causes of this are eating too many calories. The insulin surges every time I had a ice cream cone, I'm getting the sugar surge, so I'm getting the insulin surge. Also, alcohol, that was not an issue for me. Overeating, I couldn't stop eating. Artificial sweeteners, we didn't do that. We didn't do diet things, whatever. Elevated triglycerides, absolutely. Mine were very elevated. Snacking, I snacked all the time, eating late at night. I would eat with Steve when he got home from work at night, even though I hadn't been out working like he had been. And inadequate time between meals. I was eating very frequently. I was snacking all the time. And so I made the decision that while he was at work, he worked every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. This was on Wednesday night when we learned this. I made the decision that come Sunday morning, I was going to set about to reverse this. So Sunday morning, I got up, I had breakfast with him, and he went off to work. I didn't tell him what I was doing. He didn't even know about McDonald's. So I just told him, have a good day. So he goes off to work. I did fine. I made it to lunch. I didn't snack. I didn't drink anything other than water in between meals. I went about my work, and I was happy because I was on a mission. And the afternoon, I had my lunch. Afternoon, I went through the afternoon. I just did great. He got home from work. I didn't eat with him that night, but, that was all right. I at least sat with him there. Monday morning, I woke up. Monday morning was always a stressful day for me because for many years, I wrote for the newspaper, and my deadline was Monday morning. So I had a lot of pressure, and I was busy, and I got my article submitted, and then it hit. Woo, did I need a snack? And I was so anxious, and I'm pacing, and I'm drinking water, and I'm praying, Lord, please help me. I want to get through this. And I made it to lunch. I had my lunch. No going through the cupboards, trying to find more stuff. I got in the mid-afternoon. It's like, liver, give up a snack. I need a snack. But I wanted it to come from internally. I didn't want to be eating anything. So I'm drinking, I'm pacing, I'm praying, and I got through Monday afternoon. Steve got home from work. I did not eat with him. I woke up Tuesday morning, and I knew immediately that something had changed. It's just like what we learned is that leptin resets itself at night. And when you snack, it messes up that hormone balance. And when you eat right before you go to bed, it doesn't allow leptin to reset itself. And so I had been defeating all this purpose. But anyway, I knew immediately on Tuesday morning that something had changed. And I went on that week and I lost an additional 4 pounds. And a lot of that came because I learned to drive past McDonald's. And I stopped the snacking, so I wasn't eating as many calories. But there are the basic things that we have talked to you about insulin resistance is the same with leptin resistance. And to reverse it, the keys are 5 to 6 hours between meals, no snacking, no late night eating. You want at least 3 to 4 hours before bedtime to be your last that you eat. Avoid high fat, high fructose combinations. Well, what's the favorite bedtime snack? Ice cream, absolutely. What can be higher in fat or fructose? Eat low fat naturally and avoid sweeteners with fructose. The problem with the things that are sweetened, like your diet sodas that have the high fructose corn syrup, you think you're doing yourself something good by having the diet, but what it does, it actually turns off that communication between the stomach and the brain so that you've eaten a big meal, but the brain hasn't gotten the message yet, and so you keep eating. You're better off to drink, and we tell you, if you look at the food list, sodas are at the bottom of the list, but you're better off to drink a regular soda than to drink a diet because of that reason. You actually eat more if you're doing the diet. So timing, it's a lot about timing. Don't even chew gum. I chewed gum by the pack. I could chew a pack of gum between prayer meeting and home, 30 minutes, And if I had to go down into Chattanooga off the mountain for something, I could have 2 or 3 packs of gum. I've chewed the whole thing. That's how I stayed awake, But in fact, I have my teeth back here are totally, there's no, you should have shapes on, they're totally gone. And the dentist always says, I don't know how you did that. I know how I did that. But anyway, so there's another thing with timing that we want to talk about, and that is the circadian rhythm.
So we do operate on a diurnal system. That means a day-night system. In fact, all living organisms do that. Even plants do that. And so it should be come as no surprise to us that if you're going to try to manage your gene expression, we need to pay attention to this diurnal system. Diurnal means the day-night. So when you're we know that we operate on this type system because most people sleep when? At night. And we get up in the morning. If you eat breakfast, we know that people that eat breakfast have better weight management than people who skip breakfast. And you also have much better glucose tolerance. So your fasting glucose level is going to improve if you simply eat breakfast. And absorption of our nutrients or even medications follows a diurnal system. Now, a lot of doctors know this. I don't know why we don't take advantage of it, but they tell you to take your blood pressure medicines every morning, yet they know, a lot of them do anyway, that if you take blood pressure medications at night, they will be absorbed better and it'll do a better job of regulating your blood pressure for the 24-hour period. Distribution, metabolism, even elimination tends to follow a diurnal system. You'll find your bowels move at the same time just about every day or whatever. We are programmed on a day-night clock. So, there are circadian rhythms that are associated with diabetes. And what kind of associations do we see? When you eat your meal has a lot to do with how well you're going to process that meal. So if you eat late, we know that you're going to have a decreased resting energy expenditure. And you're going to also have a decreased glucose tolerance. So a lot of people with diabetes eat their main meal at the night. One of the things you can do to increase your glucose tolerance is eat your large meal in the morning. Skipping breakfast causes you to have impaired fasting lipids. Now, do you know what fasting lipids are? What's the other name for fasting lipids? Fasting fats, okay. You can say, another way we can say that is triglycerides. Triglycerides are floating fats in the blood. And Karen talked about how there was a blockade between the fat cells and the brain. That blockade, we know, that we represented as a red bar up there, is actually triglycerides. When your triglycerides are elevated, it blocks your brain from receiving the leptin signal. And what you can do to lower your triglycerides, one of the first things you can do is no in-between meal snacking. And you space your meals so there's about 5.5 to 6 hours between your meals. That last hour and a half before you eat your meal, what you start doing is you burn up the free-floating blood fats or the triglycerides. Magical, huh? And it just brings these down. So that's a good thing that we can do. And if you skip breakfast, what it does is it decreases your insulin sensitivity. Another way of saying that is it increases your insulin resistance. It makes your diabetes worse, in other words. It helps you gain weight. If you want to gain weight, skip breakfast. Sumo wrestlers, how many meals a day do they eat? One. But what do they do when they eat, or right after they eat? They lay down and sleep. And that way, their glucose spikes, their insulin levels spike. It puts them in a weight-gaining mode for the next 6 hours at least, and they're going to store the energy that they just ate at that one meal as fat. And that's one of the ways that these people become so large. It's because their activities are manipulating their hormones and making them gain weight. So we can do that if we want to, but who wants to? Not very many people. We really want to do the opposite. So anyway, then if you skip breakfast, you have significantly increased risk of type 2 diabetes, and you have an increased 24-hour blood glucose level. So the circadian rhythms are really important. Yes, ma'am, a question.
One of my patients with diabetes, if they wait longer than 5 hours, the liver will go up sugar, and then they eat and the sugar goes up even higher.
Yes, she's making the observation that a lot of her patients, they help me out. Yes, if they wait longer than 5 hours, then the liver starts secreting glucose, and then they eat, and that drives the blood sugar even higher. Is that true? Yes, absolutely, that does occur. But there's something that we need to understand here. You actually want to get to the place where several times a day, if possible, you're causing the liver to dump sugar. Because as the liver dumps sugar, what's it doing to its weight? Yes, it's decreasing. It's decreasing its size. It's decreasing those fat stores as well. And so the dawn phenomenon. Were you here when I talked about dawn phenomena? No. I'm going to ask them to increase their fiber. Increase their fiber. Because you see, as the fiber goes up, there's multiple physiological things that happen in the body. And the things that happen there are, what you want to do is you want to try to reverse the underlying problem, not treat the blood sugar. So I tell them, I don't care what your blood sugar is. I just simply don't care. But I care very deeply about why the blood sugar is out of line.
Also, you might want to address the issue of 6 meals a day, if you haven't.
No, I haven't talked about that. It has been, for many years, a lot of practitioners have said you should eat 5 to 6 meals a day because you're going to have better glycemic control. And at the 2012 International Diabetes Convention, there was a scientist got up and reported on a study that was done in Europe. And in this particular study, they took 2 groups of people. One group of people, they said, they fed both people. They fed in 24 hours exactly the same food. But one group of people, they said, we want you to eat your meals in you eat your food in 6 small meals a day. And their theory was that that's going to give you the best glycemic control. The other group over here, they said, we want you to eat your food in 2 meals a day. Now, based on what you know from the spirit of prophecy, tell me how this is going to end up. And that's exactly what happened. It was the group that had 2 meals a day had much better glycemic control than the 6 meals a day. And right now science knows that, and we're trying to begin to make a swing away from the multiple meals a day. But people still know if you don't eat, the liver's going to give up sugar and your blood sugar is going to rise. And our focus is on the blood sugar. I personally believe that focus is on the wrong thing. We need to focus on the whole plant-based foods that are going to help you increase your butyrate levels. They're going to help you increase your good bacteria. They're going to change the way the body functions, and no in-between meal snacking at all. Not a bite. No lemon water, no flavored drinks, nothing in between meals except pure water, because anytime flavor hits your mouth, it throws a whole bunch of hormonal switches. It says food is coming and we got to prepare for it. You can't have beans between meals. I'm sorry, nothing between meals except pure water. That's the rule according to Steve. Yes, well, we'll go here first and then I'll come to you.
What about timing of breakfast? Like we eat 2 meals, like 10:30 breakfast and 5 o'clock supper. Does it matter?
Well, she's asking, does it matter what time you eat your breakfast? Some studies indicate that breakfast is really, the timing, you should eat within a couple hours of getting up. I don't strain at it a whole lot, except I want to do this much. I want your second meal of the day to be spaced 5 to 6 hours after the first one, but I want it to be at least 4 hours before you go to bed. Okay, so if you're going to do the 2-meal plan, that's about the only way I'm going to restrict you on that. But some studies indicate that if you are eating within a couple hours of rising in the morning, you're going to have your best glycemic control for the 24-hour period. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering about people that have gastric operations. They have a tiny stomach.
Okay, she's wondering about people that have had gastric operations, your things like your lap band or your stomach stapling or whatever kind of procedure you've had, your bariatric surgeries. And they have a very tiny stomach. How should they eat? Well, they're not normal people anymore. So follow your doctor's directions. Okay? Whole food, plant-based is a wonderful way to go. If you have lap band surgery and they can go in and release the band or whatever, I don't know how they do that. That's up to them to help you manage that. But if you're considering bariatric surgeries, first thing I would say is, why not try lifestyle? You try lifestyle and you have your body the way God created it, not the way some surgeon has engineered it. And to me, it makes a whole lot more sense. And it's a whole lot less risky. I've had patients that died from complications of bariatric surgeries. And I've watched them lose significant amounts of weight, and then they just get all, electrolytes and everything out of balance. And young people die because of this problem. So, Okay, let's talk for a little bit about epigenetics. Oh, we have 2 more questions. One more question back here in the back.
I just want to ask, how substantial does that breakfast need to be? Is there like a minimum number of calories you need?
Is there a minimum number of calories you should consume before breakfast? Well, let's do it this way. Let's say you're going to eat 3 meals a day. I would make that breakfast the biggest of the 3. Okay? Yeah, make sure you're getting plenty of fiber in there. Plenty of fiber. So maybe 50% of your calorie intake, 50% of your fiber intake.
So is that where you're eating, your sweet potatoes and your beans or are you eating granola and oatmeal and that kind of stuff?
She's asking, does that mean you have to eat sweet potatoes and beans and things like that, or can you have granola and oatmeal and things like that? Your choice. Your choice, however you want to do it, but make the breakfast the most substantial meal of the day. One of the things we love to do for breakfast, I got to tell you, we went to some friend's house. It actually, this lady was a nurse practitioner. We're going to talk more about her this afternoon, but we went into her house. She invited us to come to their town and help them with a program, and they offered us an overnight stay so we wouldn't have to drive home. It was very thoughtful of her. And anyway, we get up the next morning and sit down to the breakfast table. There was a little bowl of blueberries about this big round. Now there's 4 people sitting at the table. Little bowl of blueberries like that. She didn't know how I eat blueberries for breakfast. And there was a little bowl of strawberries. I think it had 4 or 5 strawberries cut up into it. That was it. That was it. But there were other things on the table. There was some pumpkin seeds, and there were some hemp hearts, and there were a few pecans, and a few walnuts, and some things like that. And she said, well, what we're having for breakfast is breakfast bowls. And I'm thinking, and where's the nearest restaurant? And I was doing some mental calculations. This doesn't look like breakfast to me. Well, I figured, suck it up, Steve. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. So I watched her. Whatever she put in her bowl, I put in my bowl, about the same amount. So she put a little dab of this and a little dab of that. She started out with, I think, some whole grain cereal, just a small little amount of that. And she put just a few strawberries and just a few blueberries and just a few of this kind of nut and that kind of nut and this kind of seed and that kind of seed and whatever else. And then she poured milk on top of it. I thought, yuck. But I poured milk on top of mine. And I put the first thing in my mouth and the texture. Oh, have you ever had any pumpkin seeds with milk on it? The first 3 bites were almost intolerable. But after that, it's like, outside of the texture, this really tastes good. And by the time I was done with that bowl, that breakfast bowl, guys, I was converted. I have never been the same again. And if I want a good breakfast, what I do is I sit down to a breakfast bowl like that.
And you were also full.
Yes, I mean, I'll have 35, 40 grams of fiber for breakfast. This big breakfast bowl about that big around, and just, oh, wow. I'll go 6 hours. And I'm not even asking for lunch yet. I haven't had a snack. Now, if I sit down for biscuits and gravy and eggs for breakfast, by 10 or 10:30 in the morning, if I eat at 7:30, by 10 or 10:30 in the morning, 3 hours later, I am fit to be tied. I am physically trembling. I am so hungry. And it's just like, I have got to eat. I know what's going on. My body just does what it does, and it just doesn't last. But if I eat that high fiber food, I'm great. Okay, so moving on. Now let's talk about epigenetics. This is important. Oh, yes, thank you. Okay, so epigenetics. All diseases have a genetic component. If you don't have the genes for a disease, you simply won't get that. And that was one of as we were observing identical twins, that is one of the first things that we began to notice, because they can have an exact genetic component, yet one twin might get diabetes, the other one doesn't. One twin gets cancer, the other one remains cancer-free. So one gets fat, and the other one stays skinny. How can that be? Because they have exact identical genes. Well, we began to realize that there are differences here, and this is what led us to the understanding of a new science called epigenetics. Epi means on top of, genetics means your genes, so epigenetics refers to factors that affect the way that the genes work independent of the genes themselves, and it was first reported in Time magazine January 6, 2010. So that was only 12 years ago that it was publicly reported that way. They had known about it for a little bit in scientific laboratories by that time. Dr. Randy Girdle was the head of the genomics laboratory at Duke University, and they were studying agouti mice. And these agouti mice are yellow mice that tend to gain a lot of weight, and they develop diabetes, they develop heart disease, and they die prematurely of cancer. And so one of their objectives of this study was to see if they could actually alter the agouti gene. So they fed the mother mouse a special nutritional supplement, and when she had offspring, instead of being born as agouti mice, they were born as normal mice. They had normal brown coats instead of yellow. They didn't gain weight. They didn't get the cancer. They didn't get the heart disease. Yet when they tested their genome, all the offspring still had the Agouti gene. So they had actually changed the genetic expression of these little mice, and ultimately they decided that what it was that caused the problem was a toxic diet that the mother mouse had been on in the first place. So, the question that we have to ask is, does that apply to other organisms beside mice? We learned that you can have the same genes but different expressions, and diet changed the way the genes work. It actually deactivated the Agouti gene, so you can play an active role in how your genes are expressed, and you can actually pass some of those changes on to your offspring. Well, there have been a lot of tests that have been done since then. The National Institutes of Health saw that, and I think they allocated right away, I think it was $130 million to study epigenetics research because it looked so promising. One of those studies was done by Dr. Dean Ornish. Now, Dean Ornish made his splash in the medical world in a big way in 1990 when, as a young cardiologist, he actually was able to document in the cath lab that he could reverse cardiovascular disease. I was working in cardiology at the time, and we routinely taught people that once you have cardiovascular disease, you've got it for the rest of your life. And, you know, it's not reversible. But he documented that it could be reversed. And what he had done in this particular study back in 1990, he had taken the patients in that had already had a cardiovascular event, that already had a heart attack or unstable angina or something like that, and they'd already been to the cath lab. And so he enrolled them in a lifestyle program where he fed them a plant-based diet. And they had to do moderate exercise, they had stress management, and then finally they had weekly support groups to keep them focused on what they were going to, or what they were supposed to be doing. And he said, well, let's do with these people with, let's see if we can find men that have turned down prostate cancer treatment. They've turned down traditional treatment. And let's see if we can enroll them in our program. They found 30 men that they were able to enroll in their program. And they did genetic testing of these men before and after the study to see what kind of impacts the study was going to have on their genes. And at that point in time, you'll remember back in, I think it was 1989 or something like that, that Ronald Reagan enrolled the United States in a multinational scientific process. It was a big study to try to unravel the human genome. They anticipated that it would take 50 to 60 years to do that. And that study was completed in just 13 years. So by the time 2006 rolls around and Dean Ornish is doing his study, we already knew of 453 disease-promoting genes, and we knew of 48 disease-preventing genes. So before and after this prostate cancer study, they tested the men for all these genes, and they found that every one of the disease-promoting genes in these men were active. And all of the disease-preventing genes were inactive. So they put them on the 3-month program, and the results were nothing short of phenomenal. All the men lost weight, blood pressures came down, tumors shrank, and their health improved, their energy levels went up, etc. And when they retested the genes, those genes had done an exact flip-flop. The disease-promoting genes had become inactive, and the disease-preventing genes had become active. Now, I don't know if you understand the significance of what we're saying here, but it has a tremendous significance to all of those people that are suffering diseases that have a genetic component, because they turned off all the bad and they turned on all the good. How many genes have a genetic component? I mean, how many diseases, excuse me? All diseases do. All diseases do. This is the stuff that goosebumps are made of. I mean, that is tremendous. Pharmaceutical companies jumped on this big time. The last time I looked up to see how many medications actually, their mechanism of action is epigenetics. There were 13 of them. That was the last time I looked. There are probably more by now. But, they understand how much this could mean to them in a big way. So the prostate cancer study taught us that we were able to turn off all the bad, turn on all the good, and so that means there's hope for all of us that are suffering from diseases that have a genetic predisposition. Guys, we live in a wonderful day and age. But we have known this stuff now since 1863. 1863. That's how many years now? We're bordering on 150 years, are we not? Isn't it time for Jesus to come back? He's just waiting on a people that perfectly reflect His character. Whew. Can you see how the health message can work to prepare people for the coming of the Lord? It can help them to have healthy lives, to be able to focus and discern what is truth from error, and to help salt out the deceptions of the devil that are all there surrounding us. So anyway, the basis of epigenetics is this. We are able to modify gene expression. It does not change the DNA sequence, but it modifies the expression of the gene. It'll occur within one organism's lifetime, and those changes can actually be preserved and passed on. When the cell divides, it can actually be passed on to offspring. And the scientific studies indicate, we know now that in things like earthworms and whatever, and, short-lived type organisms, those epigenetic changes can be passed on to the third and fourth generation.
Can they be undone?
Can they be undone? Well, if you do what you did, you're going to get what you got. There you are. That's right. There you are. So if you follow a lifestyle that's going to turn on all the bad, you can turn on all the bad again. If you follow a lifestyle that's going to turn on all the good, you can turn on all the good again.
So I'm trying to follow you in the inheritance portion of what you're talking about.
Okay.
How long does it take to make this?
Okay, he's asking a very good question, and he's trying to follow how long this is going to be passed on to your inheritance, and how long does it take? You have what we call an epigenetic memory. So when you do some things, some of the activities you do can change your genetic expression right away, just like what we learned up here. But some of those traits can be erased just as quickly. Sometimes some of those traits we can easily pass on. We know from studies of what happened during World War II, they would go in and because of shortages and food and whatever else, they may restrict your intake of red meats or whatever. And the lean characteristics could be passed on to offspring. 2 and 3 generations. People are still realizing some of the good from that. But on the flip side, you have people that become obese, and some of those problems that go with obesity also can be passed on. So you have an epigenetic memory, but your lifestyle largely determines the epigenetic expression.
It's like loading the gun and pulling the trigger.
Oh, that's exactly an analogy I'm going to talk about. In fact, it's on one of my slides. You'll see it shortly. Back here's a question. Yes, ma'am.
You have an epigenetic history, so you also have a lifestyle history. Children grow up learning to eat from their parents.
Oh, absolutely. She says we have a lifestyle history. Children learn to eat from their parents. Yes, I tell people all the time, yes, you have a genetic predisposition for diabetes, but you inherit more than your genes. You inherit mom's recipes. Yes. You learn that lifestyle, absolutely right. So I want to show you another slide. This was produced by the National Institutes of Health. I absolutely love this slide because it shows up here a gene. Your gene, and your gene is made up of a chromosome, and the chromosome is made up of this spiral helix DNA. And you'll notice that right here is a methyl group. A methyl group is made up of 1 carbon atom and 3 hydrogen atoms. And so what we learned is that when you have a methyl group that comes along, it can attach itself to the outside of the DNA strand. And when it does that, it always causes the best expression of the gene. So, when a methyl group comes along and attaches itself to an outside of the DNA strand where a gene is located, it causes the best expression of that gene. And the reason I get so excited about this is I know where we get methyl groups from. It is the colorful pigments in your fruits and vegetables. The greens, the reds, it's the pigments itself, the purples, the blues, those things. And so when you eat those colorful vegetables, what you do is you supply yourself with an abundance of methyl group, which comes along and gives you the best expression. Okay, there's another way that this happens. Now this is a protein right here, and you'll notice that the DNA strand is wrapped tightly around that protein. This gene cannot be expressed in this position, but there's other things like we call them epigenetic factors that can come along and attach itself to the protein tail. We call it a histone tail. And when it attaches to that histone tail, what it does is it causes the DNA to unwind, and right here would be the same gene you saw over here, but this time it is accessible, so now you can have the good gene expression. Here you would have a poor gene expression. Now, I don't know much about epigenetic factors. I have tried to find where we get epigenetic factors from lifestyle, and only about 2 or 3 months ago I finally learned where we can get at least one epigenetic factor. It happens to be in broccoli. Oh well, I guess I'm going to have to eat broccoli anyway, huh?
Is it fair to say that the high-color foods make DNA the best it can be?
Is it fair to say that the high-color foods make DNA the best it can be? Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the lesson I have on my very next slide. Dr. Charlotte Ling from Lund University took some of those funds that the National Institutes of Health allocated, and she and her team discovered that there are over 800 genes that are associated with type 2 diabetes, which have epigenetic changes that can be turned on and off. And there are 3 things that really impact whether you can turn these on and off. The first thing, the number one thing out of everything that you can do, diet. Eat every color of the rainbow every day on a bed of greens. Eat every color of the rainbow every day. So that's the number one thing you can do. The number 2 thing you can do, daily moderate exercise. Number 3 happens to be other lifestyle changes. Get your sleep at night, drink your water, get your sunshine. Those 8 natural remedies that Adventists talk about all the time. Do them. Be ye doers of the word, not hearers only. Have you heard that before? Okay. In your participant handbook, and I don't remember what page it is. It's page 30, excuse me. In the participant handbook on page 30, I have tried to make a short, concise list of all the things that we know that will reverse type 2 diabetes. But remember, if you have other diseases that are inflammatory based, which are most diseases, these can be reversed by the same procedures. Okay? So I've listed all these things there. Eat predominantly the whole plant-based foods. Start out with your fiber slowly and gradually increase over about 4 weeks until you're eating 50 grams or more of fiber a day. Drink your 8 to 10 glasses of water a day. No snacking between meals, none, unless you have tested and your blood sugar is actually low. And in that case, you have my permission to do it, but get your fiber levels up as well. Okay? Because when fiber levels get up, then the blood sugar is not going to be bottoming out unless you're being over-medicated, in which case you need to see your doctor. So if your blood sugars are low, see your doctor and get him, get a plan. Ask for a plan of how you can safely come off your medications. That's very important. So then other things to do, you avoid the inflammatory foods. There's 5 groups of inflammatory foods. Processed meats are number 1. Number 2 are refined grains. Number 3, sweets. Number 4, refined fats. Number 5, your diet sodas. Leave them alone. All of those 5 food groups as much as you can. In the real world, you may not be able to totally avoid that, but try. Move higher on the food list that we gave you the other day. And that will help as well. Fast at night. Go with the 2 meals a day. Do the intermittent fasting. It defats the liver. It's one of the fastest things that you can do to defat the liver. And it can be done in as little as about 2 weeks. Then defatting the pancreas is going to take you quite a bit longer. Yes, sir.
I'm just no farm boy, and I have one simple question. How long does it take from the time that you get diabetes till you can get all them cell doors opened up so that all the insulin go back to cell out?
Okay, so he's asking how long does it take from the time you get the diagnosis or whatever, or until you start trying to reverse, until you are able to actually get everything functioning again? The answer is it depends on you. It depends on you. We're all bio-individuals. Now, I've seen some individuals that in their home situation, their spouse says, I'm not going to cook that way for you. Makes it really tough. Get your spouse on board. Okay, she's on board. Then if you're doing the exercise, if you're doing the walking after meals, if you're doing all the things you're supposed to do, and if you've had diabetes for less than 10 years, more than likely you're going to have your blood sugars that will be trending down. You'll be breaking below 100 within probably 4 to 6 weeks. And we see this happen all the time. And it happens as you lose weight as well. So if you will get busy about the process of losing weight, get serious about trying to trim back those calories, get your exercise after the meals, make your weight loss easier like what we've talked about, then that weight will drop off fairly rapidly as well. The average person has to lose 33 pounds. For a large person, you might have to lose 40 or 45 or something more. A very slight person, latest study just out April this year, that people normal body size, they have to lose weight too. I had somebody approach me, they do it all the time. People approach me and say, well, I don't need to lose weight, I need to gain weight. But I look at them, they're normal body size. They're slender. But why do you need to gain weight? It's because 68% of the people that you see around you are already overweight or obese, and you don't feel normal anymore. And so all these people, they want to gain weight so they can be normal. No. We need to change all those that are abnormal. So if you really get with it and work with it, I have seen people reverse in probably 5 to 6 weeks. But the lifestyle approach is a slightly slower approach than the calorie restricted approach. So if you're going the severe calorie restriction, 800 calories a day, it's a little brutal to do. Do it under your doctor's supervision, you'll get the fastest results. But going the lifestyle approach, you're changing the lifestyle. You're practicing putting new things into practice, learning how to cook plant-based recipes and things of that nature. We're in it for the long haul. If you're in it for the long haul, then it may take you up to 6 months or a year to completely reverse. But are the benefits worth it? You're no longer sticking your fingers. You're no longer feeling bad multiple times a day when those sugars get up or go down or whatever else. Life is good. And there's so many associated health benefits. So I was pre-diabetic. I weighed 30 pounds more than I weigh now. And for me, I took the slow route. It took me probably a year and a half to lose my 30 pounds. But here is the unexpected thing. I have suffered with migraine headaches all my life, since I was 13. And as I got to middle age and beyond, they became more and more frequent. I would have them about 5 times a week. I have a love-hate relationship with the toilet. I've thrown up so many times. You get the migraines, and then it just, it gets so bad that you just lose all your stomach contents. Anyway, I have been to the doctors. I've had every medication in the book. Nothing works well. The best thing that works for me happened to be Fiorinal. So anyway, the big thing was food allergies. I had about 40 foods that I could not tolerate. People hated to have our family over to their homes for a meal because either I got sick or I didn't have something that I could eat.
And they still don't like to because they don't know how to feed us. But anyway.
But it's a whole lot easier now. However, I decided to do nutrient supplements. I said, I'm going to do the greatest nutraceuticals that are out there. I spend $100 a month for vitamin supplements, great nutraceuticals, and I got sicker and sicker. And finally, one day I'm reading on the label and it talks about these foods contains broccoli, blueberries, collard greens, kale. It's listing all these foods. And I said, well, hey, why can't I do that? And so I decided to nix the supplements and I would start eating high nutrient foods, and that became my focus. Do you know today there's only one food that I struggle with? No. I eat broccoli. I do talk about it because I can't eat a plate full of it. I mean, she'll sit down to just a plate full of it. I can't do that. But anyway, yes, our time is running out, guys. I have to tell you.
What's your one food?
My one food is wheat. But I can have some every 3 days. So, if you space it out once every 3 days, it's okay. Now, this afternoon, we're going to be talking about how to use this diabetes reversal program as a evangelistic tool in your church. If you're interested in doing that and you would like to participate in that meeting, I would encourage you to get down to ACBC and get one of the leadership manuals. That will help a great deal. You will understand a whole lot more about it, and we can go through the process together. If you're reluctant to do so, after the evening meeting tonight, you'll have to make a beeline trip to the ACBC because they've asked us to pick up our materials after the meeting. So get there before we do, and you can get the book after the meeting if you want to wait till after the meeting. But anyway, that's what we're going to be talking about this afternoon. We have lots of exciting stories to tell. God is good. I'm sorry we're going to have to cut this off now. I'll take your questions after we have a closing prayer. So if you would, let's stand together and have a prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the wonderful way that we have been created and that you've provided a way that we can experience good health. And so we thank you for the knowledge. Bless us each one. We're getting ready to enter the Sabbath hours soon. And Lord, I pray that your Holy Spirit will descend upon this campground and you will baptize us with your Holy Spirit, that you will make us an army of people that are going out to share the good news of the salvation of Jesus Christ. Thank you for hearing our prayers. In his name, amen.